Welcome LearnWake members, this is Brandon Judd, and today I'm responding to a toe side front side 720 video analysis request that's been uploaded by user therealcolden. First of all, thanks for submitting the video and for putting this description down here. It's not too often we get to see a really technical trick in our analysis, but we always enjoy doing them. So hopefully we can get this thing knocked out for you and help you get your 720s more consistent, as in the description mentions that you have landed a bunch of toe side 720s but are having a problem landing them again. And this issue is very common. A lot of people will get the mechanics of the trick down pretty good right away, and that trick will continue to function, and the rider will kind of let their guard down as if, I've got this, this is easy for me, and then there will be some sort of weird habit that creeps into your trick, and then it will stop functioning, which is really frustrating because it's hard to tell what that is unless you have a third party kind of come in and let you know what's changed. But once you get this back, the good news is, and the reason I say that is, once you get this back, you should have it and it should stick with you for a while. So let's get started. Your 7 is really good. The rotation's awesome. You show great board control. The only real issue I'm seeing is one issue at the beginning, which causes two problems later on, or rather two symptoms of the original problem. So two of the symptoms. One of the symptoms is you're landing on your heels. So let's take a look at that really quick. So you're landing, you'll notice landing and falling over your heels, one of the more obvious ones. And the other symptom is harder to see, but I want you to watch your axis. Your axis goes, it stays on for a really long time, and then it goes off toward the end, which is why you end up over your heels. So if you can see the white top sheet of the board, that means you're off axis. And if you can see the bottom of the board, like here, that dark bottom, that means that you are on axis currently. So you're on axis, still on axis. Now you're starting to go off, but not until you've passed the peak of your trick. And then you go a little more off axis, and then you can still kind of see the top sheet of the board even a little bit all the way until you're landing. And so those two symptoms are what's throwing your landing position off, which can be really frustrating. So let's talk about why that's happening. And let me go to the point in the trick that kind of starts it all. So right here, let me see if I can get a better shot of that. It's hard to, there we go, here's a good one. All right, so your upper body, if you can see here, it's really hard to tell, it's so dark, but your eyes are looking into your rotation really quickly and way ahead of your board. So when spinning this much, spinning a 7 or more, a lot of people get really nervous that they're not going to rotate enough, and especially when you are risking a back edge catch at the end if you don't spin far enough. A lot of people will get after it really early, and using your upper body's momentum to do that is a really common mistake. A lot of people will throw their shoulders, chest and shoulders, into it. Now what happens here is when you start to go into the rotation, which is over your right hand shoulder, what happens is you throw your body a little bit to the right. So you'll notice your axis right now is now a little bit tilted. And once you start spinning, like if you've ever grabbed a bicycle wheel that's not attached to the bike, and you spin it and hold on to the axle, you know how it's really hard to turn at that point? I don't know if you ever did that experiment in science class or whatever. But it's the same reason why, when you're riding your bicycle at faster speeds, it's easier to balance than it is at slow speeds, because that spinning wheel wants to rotate around that axle, around its axis, and the faster it's spinning, the more it wants to stay doing that. So once you start spinning, your axis kind of gets stuck, and so this is something just to keep in mind when you're doing a lot of spins like this, is whatever position you start getting into your spin on, that axis is going to kind of stick with you. So right now your upper body is tilted this direction, your lower body is tilted this direction. And so that is when you're beginning to start, so it'll stay there. Additionally, what happens is because you're starting really on axis and getting into this spin, it doesn't allow your board to go off axis early in the trick. It forces your board to stay more on axis since you start spinning so fast with your upper body right here. It forces your board to stay more on axis for longer, and then it has to go off axis a little bit at some point in this based on the way you throw it, and that's why you're ending up off axis at the end. So let's watch that again when we notice your upper body is rotating ahead of your lower body. So now you've started to spin, and you'll notice right here, if I was to draw a line to show your axis, it's still tilted with your upper body toward your takeoff side and your lower body on your landing side. And then you continue to hold that tilted axis all the way until you land, which puts you over your heels. Instead, you want to land kind of the opposite, pitched over on your toes, and that's going to help you land edging away from the wake and be more on top of the board when you finish. So again, those are the issues, but let's look at a correct one to see how we can fix it. Alright, so I want to show you this example. This is Dean Smith doing a toe side frontside 1080. And I want you to pay attention to one thing primarily, is how quickly and early in the trick he goes off axis. And I'm not suggesting by this that you need to take your trick more off axis. You can still keep the amount of off axis that you're spinning on your current trick. You just need to let it happen a little quicker. And keep in mind, Dean's also spinning another 360 further than you are, so the timing might be a little different. But you'll see right here, he gets pretty off axis right away. I can see the top of the board, and you know, he hasn't even passed the middle part of the wakes yet. So, and you can still see his off axis, and then he starts to get kind of flat here until he lands, and then he lands on axis. So hopefully that makes sense. We'll just kind of play it through. So off axis early, and then it gets more on axis at the end. Same thing with JD here. He does it off the double up, but it's the same thing. So he'll get off axis quickly, and then it'll get flatter and flatter and flatter until he's on axis at the end. So hopefully that illustrates that well. And then so that's the axis symptom that I wanted to show you. Now here's the looking with your upper body portion of it. So I want you to watch where Clayton's eyes go on this, and this is going to help you understand how you don't necessarily need to throw your upper body into it. I know he goes really off axis here as well, but his board rotates quicker and earlier into the trick than his upper body does. So that's something that is important to note. So he'll go up and into it. And even right here, his board has already moved further. I know he's adding a grab, but his board has already moved further than his upper body. And then even right there, his upper body is still kind of facing this way, whereas at this position, you were looking back toward shore with your eyes, and then your board was, you could still see the bottom of the board, and it hadn't rotated quite this much. And then even now, he's kind of looking back this way. And he's not rushing his head through that and allowing his board to get ahead of the rotation, so that he can then spot the water here and finish the trick. So hopefully that makes sense to you. But those are the two fixes: is slow down your upper body in the rotation, and be more patient when you set your axis at the beginning. Be more patient to start spinning, because when you set your axis is the position you're going to hold. So you'll watch Clayton doesn't really start cranking into his spin right away. He sets his axis, and then right here he starts to spin and finishes the spin out. So you don't have to rush it so much. And one way to train yourself on taking it easy and being really patient is it's kind of a weird way to practice this, but if you do a toe side front side 360 with a backhand grab, which means that for you, if you're right foot forward, your left hand is going to be grabbing. So you're going to be grabbing, like tail, or you're going to be grabbing any grab that requires your left hand. Sorry, I'm left foot forward, so I keep thinking through this thing backwards. But let me give you an example of this. So this is Jeff Langley, and he does a double grab toe side, front side 3. But the reason that I say to do this is it forces you to switch hands before you land blind. And that is going to give you more control with the handle passes and getting yourself into that blind landing position. And it also teaches you to kind of wait. So you'll notice Jeff takes off his hand off of the handle, and then at this point, in order to land blind, he has to take his hand off of his board and put it back on the handle in order to get into the blind landing position. And that's a good thing to practice on your 7s, to be quick with the handle, but patient with the spin. And it separates that, because a lot of times when people know they need to start getting quick with the handle, they get too quick with the spin, and that sets them in this weird axis that you're stuck in. So practice that. I'll go back and hopefully we can kind of see that again. So again, grab and then handle pass. And what that's going to do for you is just separate the two, the spin and the handle pass, so that you can not have to worry right here when you're going to get the handle again to land blind. Again, it's stuff you've probably already done, or some things you've already worked on and gotten proficient with, but it's important to practice those things separately so that you can get comfortable being quick with the handle, because if you're worried about spinning enough, being quick with the handle is going to help you a lot more than it is rushing the spin off of the top of the wake. So that's a suggested drill you don't have to do, because it looks like you don't have a problem getting the handle. It's just more setting your axis. But I think you're on the right track, and once you correct that beginning position, I think you'll be good to go, and this will be a really nice 7 for you. So yeah, if you didn't turn your head so far, kept your upper body squared toward the boat, and allowed your board to get off axis earlier, then you would come back around onto your toes. So anyway, long explanation for a simple fix, although it may be hard to break that habit right away. But if you have any other questions, you can hit us up in the comment section below, or you can upload another video of yourself trying it, and we can analyze that one and move forward. Thanks again.